She was a radiant young woman with dreams of making it big in the beauty industry.
She had hoped to open up her own hair and nail salon. She was looking to go to school so she could study cosmetology.
It was just something that she felt passionate about.
But in the pursuit of her dreams, she suddenly goes missing.
Her phone just kept going straight to voicemail.
At this point, the family was growing increasingly concerned.
I just remember that night, we couldn't get no sleep.
Did a new job put her in danger?
A lot of women turn to exotic dancing as a way to make some extra cash.
It was supposed to be a temporary thing. It wasn't just, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life.
Or was the real danger closer to home?
Dwayne, can we come in?
Now's not a good time.
He did not want to speak to them. He just wanted no parts of the investigation.
And when a strange voicemail gives rise to new questions.
Hey, honey.
The voice, who she did not recognize, was saying, "Hey, I'm back in town. Give me a call if you want to get together."
A twisted predator will be revealed.
I'm hoping you'd call and tell me that we found our little missing friend. I can think about what I can do to help out get this off my plate.
He was getting real hinky. The phrase in police work that this guy's nervous about something.
The detectives, he came in, and he said, we found something.
They described the property as almost like the devil's playground.
We looked at each other and said, oh my God. It was one of those.
Hartford, Connecticut, a middle-class community settled just off the Connecticut River.
East Hartford is a town of about 50,000 people.
It's a combination of residential neighborhoods, middle-class folks, but you have some commercial areas and also really industrial areas.
It's a place to raise a family, just a residential town. It's not known for much hustle and bustle. It's just a very nice area.
For 29-year-old Monique Cooper, it seems like an ordinary day. But an unexpected phone call will prove otherwise.
I was at home and my mom called me and she told me that Shamaya didn't come home.
Shamaya Smith is Monique's 22-year-old sister who lives at their mother's house.
According to Monique's mother, Shamaya never returned home after leaving for work the previous afternoon.
She left for work around 3 p.m. on the 14th, and her mother hadn't seen or heard from her since.
I'm like, that's not like her. And she was like, have you heard from her? I'm like, no, I'm gonna try to call her. So I hung up with my mom and I tried to call Shamaya, but her phone just kept going straight to voicemail.
Hi, it's Shamaya. I can't come to the door right now. Please leave a message.
Come on, Shamaya.
I don't understand why her phone going straight to voicemail. So I kept calling, we leaving messages.
Shamaya, give me a call as soon as you get this.
At this point, the family was growing increasingly concerned.
I end up calling my mom back and I'm like, listen, I'm gonna call the police. Something's wrong.
Hi, I need to report my sister missing.
22-year-old Shamaya Smith had a radiant beauty that shined both inside and out.
She was nice, she was fun, she was very pretty. She was tall and pretty.
Shamaya had a lot of friends. She was silly. She was the life of the party. Her smile just lit up the room when she came in.
And Shamaya's love for makeup and fashion was just another way her personality shone through.
Anytime you seen Shamaya, she had that white eyeliner on them eyes, and that was her signature.
Shamaya was really interested in pursuing her cosmetology license.
I would bring my kids over there just to spend some time with Shamaya, and my daughter got on makeup, or she got her nails done.
We'll just put on her stuff, like her heels and everything, but it used to be so much fun.
She had hoped to open up her own hair and nail salon at some point. She was looking to go to school so she could study cosmetology and achieve her dreams.
To save up the funds she needed for cosmetology school, Shamaya started dancing at a local nightclub named Cahoots.
So she was trying to work and get money so that she can pay and go to school.
A lot of women turn to exotic dancing as a way to make some fast cash. You can walk away with hundreds, maybe even thousands after one night of work.
So there was a means to the end. You know, it wasn't just, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. It was supposed to be a temporary thing.
Around that same time, Shamaya fell in love with someone new, 24-year-old Dwayne Butler.
I believe they maybe met through a mutual friend. She took him very serious. He started staying with her at my mom's house.
Looking good.
Thank you.
Looks real good up there.
I'm so glad you were here.
How much you make? Okay. So you did your thing.
He accepted her for who she was. He didn't try to make her be someone that she wasn't.
You're a little tired. You ready to go home?
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
All right, let's go.
He was very supportive, and he seemed like the type of guy who would help her reach her dreams.
But now, Shamaya has suddenly disappeared.
She left for work on the afternoon of March 14th, and 24 hours later, her family still can't get a hold of her.
So I ended up calling the police and meeting the officers at my mom's house in East Hartford. When they got to the house, he was like, well, how long have she been missing?
It's been about 24 hours, but she left yesterday around 3 p.m. to go to work.
Okay, where does she work at?
She's a dancer at a local club.
Shamaya's mom says she didn't have a car, so Shamaya was actually relying on other people to help her get back and forth to work.
Some people she knows, some people maybe she doesn't know.
Do you have any idea who would have given her a ride? Maybe a boyfriend, co-worker?
Well, her boyfriend actually lives here with us, and we already asked him if he drove her to work yesterday, and he told us no.
Her family gave the police the name of her boyfriend, Dwayne Butler.
Well, can we speak with him?
Sure, he's upstairs.
The officers entered the home in an attempt to make contact with Dwayne Butler.
East Hartford PD.
But to their surprise, Dwayne wants nothing to do with them.
Dwayne, can we come in?
Now's not a good time.
He did not want to speak to them. He just wanted no parts of the East Hartford Police Department and the investigation that was going on with Shamaya.
On March 15th, 2007, police in East Hartford, Connecticut are attempting to speak with Dwayne Butler regarding the disappearance of his girlfriend, Shamaya Smith.
Dwayne, can we come in?
Now's not a good time.
He refused to come out of his bedroom, said he did not want to speak to them, and he just wanted no parts of the East Hartford Police Department and the investigation that was going on with Shamaya.
We don't know if it's because of how he thought about the police like some people do. Maybe he was scared that they might bring up something about his past, but it seems sketchy to the police that your girlfriend would be missing and you don't want to talk to us.
Doesn't seem like he's interested in speaking with us.
We found that kind of weird at the time. But, I mean, we liked him. We didn't have an issue with him.
He's just a little wary of the police, but he already told us the last time he seen her was yesterday before she went to work, so he probably won't be much help.
Since Shamaya is an adult and there's no sign of foul play, officers have their hands tied.
Well, unfortunately, it's only been 24 hours, so there really isn't much we can do right now.
What? Are you serious?
It was like, oh, well, because she's an adult, we have to wait 48 hours.
They need 48 hours to have passed before they can officially file a missing persons report.
I'm like, 48 hours is too long. Anything could happen.
So Monique decides to take matters into her own hands.
I remember it like it was yesterday, and I got in my car, me and my 3 children, and we were driving to the news because I'm like, somebody got to say something. I need her face to get out there because somebody's seen her somewhere. I almost got into 3 car accidents trying to get to the news.
But once at the local news station, Monique doesn't get the help she is hoping for.
By the time I got to the news, they told me they couldn't put her picture out there because they needed to have police interactions or they had to get the information from the police department.
To know in your heart something is wrong with your loved one, but no one is there to help you, it must have been heartbreaking.
To be honest with you, in my opinion, they just didn't want to do it because she was black and nobody really cared.
Even though the number of Black women that go missing in America is disproportionately high, their cases are less likely to be solved than those of white women. They don't get the media attention that we would like to allot to any missing person. They're underreported and as a result, undersolved.
The family has to wait another grueling 24 hours without any word from Shemaya before they can officially file a missing persons report.
It was a long waiting period. I slept on it that night. She was in my dream and she was telling me she was being held against her will. And I'm like, where are you? Where are you? And she's like, I don't know. I don't know. And in my dream, she was telling me she had to have sex with these different guys. So I immediately thinking that, you know, she's being trafficked or something.
The next day, when Monique and her mother are finally able to file the missing persons report, Monique informs police about the chilling dream she had the night before.
I did give them that information because I felt like that was a sign or something. I don't know.
And Shemaya's loved ones are becoming more and more suspicious of her boyfriend, Dwayne.
Yeah, he has been acting strange ever since you came by the house.
Once we realized that Shemaya went missing, it's like he went missing. He came and got his stuff from my mother's house and he moved out.
No one knows where he goes, so that was definitely a red flag number 2.
That's when the detective bureau picked it up and began to look into it.
Fortunately, police are able to track Dwayne down at a friend's home where he's now living.
He's brought in for questioning, and now he realizes he has to cooperate.
So when was the last time you saw Shemaya?
It was 14th. I told her bye before she went to work.
He was the one that had seen her last before she left out that day, but he claims he didn't know who she left with.
Did you see what car she left in?
Nah, I couldn't see anything when she went out the door.
The police detectives had questioned, like, how do you not even look out the window or check on your girlfriend if someone's coming to get her?
I mean, look, we were close, right? But we weren't trying to, like, control each other or anything. I mean, she had her life, I had mine.
Did you go anywhere the evening of the 14th after Shemaya left?
Nope. I was home all day and night.
They're able to substantiate that Dwayne really was home during the time period when Shemaya disappeared.
And you have no idea where she can be right now?
No clue. But I am starting to get a little worried.
Based on the information that was shared by Dwayne, there wasn't anything that was substantial enough to keep him in custody, so Dwayne was eventually let go by East Hartford PD.
At this point, Shemaya is still just missing, and everyone is hoping she's going to turn up.
After wrapping up their conversation with Dwayne, investigators head to the nightclub where Shemaya works to speak with her manager.
They asked him, did Shemaya report to work on the 14th? And he said no.
No, she never showed up. Never called either.
Do you know if she had problems with anyone? Fellow dancers, club patrons?
No, Shemaya was pretty popular. I mean, all the other dancers loved her, and the customers loved her too.
He was like, you know, well, this one guy, he's usually always there when she's there.
It was determined he had a history of also giving her a ride to and from work.
What was his name?
Marcus. Well, it goes by the name Tank.
For detectives, this is just the lead they've been searching for.
If Tank gave Shemaya a ride to work that day, but she never showed up for work, that might mean that Tank knows where she is now.
Thanks to the manager at the nightclub where she works, detectives have just received a promising new lead in the disappearance of 22-year-old Shemaya Smith.
Shemaya's manager tells detectives about a regular she had who went by the nickname of Tank.
It was determined he had a history of also giving her a ride to and from work.
Is Tank the person who gave Shemaya a ride to work on the afternoon of the 14th?
Shemaya never showed up for work that afternoon, so if Tank was the person who picked her up from home, he likely knows where she is now.
Investigators are eager to speak with their new suspect.
Thank you so much for your time.
No problem. When they reach out to Tank, he agrees to come in for an interview.
So here's the deal. We know your friend Shemaya Smith is missing.
Shemaya from the club?
Tank seems very concerned.
He admits that he's one of Shemaya's regulars at the club, but he says he has no idea where she is now.
Tell us about the last time you saw her.
I think when I gave her a ride to work.
On the 14th?
I think so.
That's when detectives turn up the heat.
Listen, Tank, we know Shemaya never showed up for work that day.
That makes you the last person to see her before she went missing.
No. What? No, I swear. I just dropped her off.
Detectives believe they've just caught Tank in a flat-out lie.
But Tank insists he had nothing to do with Shemaya's disappearance.
It may not have been the 14th. I think it was the 13th I gave her a ride.
He says maybe he got his days wrong, and he actually dropped her off for a shift on the 13th.
I'm sorry. These days run together sometimes.
When detectives look deeper into Tank's whereabouts on the afternoon of the 14th, they discover he's telling the truth.
He had an alibi on the 14th. He was at work the whole day into the evening.
So now detectives are back at square one.
Another night passes without any sign of Shemaya Smith.
Everyone is becoming more and more concerned. Time is of the essence here.
At that point, they didn't know what was going on. But her sister wasn't going to let this go.
The next morning, Shemaya's sister Monique begins her own investigation.
Come on.
I locked myself in a room for some hours and just was playing with numbers to try to get into her voicemail. Back then, you was able to access your voicemail from anywhere.
She just kept putting in so many numbers.
And after hours of trying every combination she can think of, Monique finally makes headway.
Yes.
Finally, I was able to get into her voicemail, and I saw the last person on there.
She finally cracks the code and finds a voicemail from March 14th at 11:55 a.m., just a few hours before Shemaya disappeared.
It was a voicemail from a man, and the voice who she did not recognize was saying, "Hey, I'm back in town. Give me a call if you want to get together."
Anyway, you don't want to reach me.
What the hell?
Who is this person? She was like, the voicemail sounds strange.
All she knows is that the man calls himself Kenny.
I felt relieved, like we were onto something. After I listened to the guy's voice message, I end up getting his phone number.
And after logging the number, Monique immediately calls police with news of what she's uncovered.
Monique was truly invaluable to this case. She was going to do whatever it takes to find her missing sister.
How she did it, I couldn't tell you, but I recall the sister had somehow got access to Shemaya's phone.
Some guy called her that morning. Some guy named Kenny.
I kept asking the police, like, who is this guy? We don't know if he got my mother's house keys. We don't know if he's riding by watching us. We don't know if we're safe.
All right, we'll look into this immediately. Thank you so much, Monique.
After receiving Kenny's phone number from Monique, detectives run it through their system and immediately get a hit.
It came back to Kenneth Otto Sr., who's a 56-year-old white male.
He had a really good job as a sales manager, and he was making six figures for this company, and this is back in 2007. He did very well. He had a family, had a wife, lived in this house in Ellington.
He was a man of means, and we began looking into him.
But to their surprise, investigators uncover very little.
This guy is squeaky clean.
He's in his late 50s, he's married with 2 kids, financially well off, and here he is leaving a voicemail for this 22-year-old young woman. What overlap could these two possibly have?
Connecticut detectives investigating the disappearance of 22-year-old Shemaya Smith have just gotten another promising lead thanks to her sister, Monique Cooper.
Monique was smart enough to essentially hack into Shemaya's voicemail and found a message from a man named Kenny from the morning before Shemaya disappeared.
Hey, honey.
What the hell?
He's in his late 50s, he's married with 2 kids, financially well off, and here he is leaving a voicemail for this 22-year-old young woman who's starting to find her way in the world. What overlap could these two possibly have?
Detectives are wondering if maybe Kenny is another one of Shemaya's regulars from the club where she danced.
Investigators waste no time bringing Kenneth Otto in for questioning.
Shemaya disposed of the base of the earth. There's still a fair amount of work trying to find her somewhere else after being with you, so we're hoping that you might have some more insight with where she might be. Right. I don't know where she is. I haven't seen her for a couple days.
He admitted that he knew Shemaya and that he frequented Cahoots. He went there regularly and visited with Shemaya.
Roughly, when do you think this is the first time you ever laid eyes on her? Exactly, the end of January, beginning of February.
Ken described his relationship with Shemaya as if he was almost looking out for her, almost trying to help her accomplish her goals.
She's a really good kid. I mean, you know, when you sat and talked to her, really talk, a nice kid. I mean, she's not happy. She's never talking about being independent. She wants to be independent. She wants to get alone. She doesn't want to have to dance. She wants to go to cosmetology school, get her life together, that type of thing.
It was pretty clear to us that he seemed interested in her, and he mentioned that he gave her money and that he was helping this young lady.
Well, I gave her $500. I do that with some other people. If I believe somebody is real, I will give them the money. Male or female, yeah, I gave them the money. I'm not a saint, but, you know, I don't have any problem. I will help somebody if they're really, if I believe they're willing to go forward, and that's good. You know, a couple $100 here, $100 there.
He's trying to portray himself as just this magnanimous person.
But investigators are wondering if there's another, more nefarious reason for Ken's $500 payment to Shemaya.
Detectives asked Ken point blank if he and Shemaya had a sexual relationship.
That day, she asked me for money, but she didn't promise it. No, still, I can't get a hold of her. I had this cancer, and, you know, it's fun to play, but it doesn't, you know, I don't do it.
It was just such an off-the-wall comment. He kind of jumped right in.
How many times did you actually spend any time with her outside of her work? We never really spent all that much time together.
But Ken says that on the morning of March 14th, Shemaya reached out to him asking for a ride to work.
He says he agreed to help her out.
Hey, honey, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for picking me up.
Anytime, sweetheart.
I picked her up 3:30, 4 o'clock later, and I dropped her at Cahoots, right back on the highway, like, I don't know, quarter after 5.
Mr. Otto was specific about where he dropped her off because we asked him, Mr. Otto, did you drop her in the parking lot or at the front door? And he said, oh, right at the front door.
On the surface, Ken's story seems plausible enough, except for one thing.
Detectives already know Shemaya never showed up for work that day. So if Ken's telling the truth, what happened after he dropped her off at the front door of the club?
In an attempt to verify Ken's story, detectives obtained surveillance footage from the nightclub.
There's no sign of Ken or Shemaya in the footage from the 14th.
She never came in the front door, and there was no black pickup truck dropping her off at the front door. So we knew pretty much that Mr. Otto was being less than truthful.
Is it possible he got his days mixed up like Tank did? Sure, but based on the surveillance footage, Ken hadn't been at the club that whole week. So that would have been a much bigger mix-up than a one-day discrepancy.
Despite Ken's suspect behavior, police still have no proof Shemaiah was a victim of a crime.
Maybe Ken is just being cagey because he's trying to hide this from his wife and doesn't want her to know he's been spending time with a 22-year-old woman behind her back.
But in the following days, Ken's behavior becomes more and more erratic.
He contacts one of the detectives and sounds as if he's trying to bribe the police to drop the investigation.
Please leave a message. Hey, Don Wilson, Ken Otto. Maybe we can work something out over the phone. I was really kind of set back. I was kind of hoping you'd call to tell me that we found our little missing friend. Anyway, I gotta think about what I can do to help out get this off my plate. Because, I don't really want to be active in this. So, all right, I'll talk to you. Take care.
This guy is really starting to sweat.
Now more than ever, detectives are convinced they're on the right track.
They get a hold of Shemaiah and Ken's phone records.
The phone records show Shemaiah and Ken traveling together on the 14th, but they don't go to Cahoot's nightclub.
Investigators can see that both phones traveled to a remote area in the neighboring town of Stafford, Connecticut.
Stafford is about 20 miles away from East Hartford.
But that's not Ken's only link to the area.
Turns out, Ken owns a massive piece of property in that same area of Stafford.
The property is kind of landlocked. It's in the middle of a bunch of trees, heavily wooded property.
I mean, it was 75 acres. It's a lot of ground.
That many acres of unoccupied property, it absolutely could be a place that would make me think that someone would either be held or buried.
It's a concerning thought. However, investigators will need more than suspicions to secure a search warrant for the property.
You have to understand, a search warrant is a very powerful piece of paper. It means that the police are in your house, under your bed, in your underwear drawer.
You have to have probable cause to believe a crime was committed. Police have to be able to articulate what crime they think was committed and the area or thing that they're asking to search.
They were going to have to get on it and get on it fast, and they were going to have to make some moves even if they didn't get the warrant yet.
So investigators come up with a plan. If they can't go by land, they'll go by air.
We use the Connecticut State Police to assist us in that. And they have at least one helicopter, and they were obliging.
And on March 23rd, they conduct a flyover of Ken Otto's property.
When they did the aerial search, they saw tire tracks going in and out. They saw a big camper.
But that's not all.
The pilot informed us, hey guys, look a little bit to the left. You see that big burn pile there? And that's when Don Olson and I looked at each other and said, oh my God. It was one of those holy cow moments.
On March 23, 2007, investigators in East Hartford, Connecticut have gotten one step closer to locating missing 22-year-old Shemaiah Smith.
Police believe an older man named Kenneth Otto, who Shemaiah recently became involved with, was the last person she was with before she disappeared.
He also owns a huge piece of remote land in a nearby town of Stafford.
And when investigators fly over the property by helicopter, they see something that makes their hearts drop.
The pilot informed us, hey guys, look a little bit to the left. You see that big burn pile there? And that's when Don Olson and I looked at each other and said, oh my God. It was one of those holy cow moments.
Without a moment to waste, investigators decide it's time to make a bold move.
There are exceptions to that warrant requirement, and one of which is if there's exigent circumstances.
It means you don't need a warrant because the feeling is that someone's life is in danger and there's no time to go get a warrant.
So based on the detective's suspicion that someone may be in imminent harm, they decided that they would move forward with searching the property.
And when investigators begin examining the burn pit, they make a gruesome discovery.
They found teeth, they found pieces of bone, and they found a piece of a foot, a human foot, in that fire pit.
Police also found 3 spent .40 caliber shell casings in the fire pit, along with what looked like some sort of house key.
Inside the nearby camper, there's more evidence that something terrible happened here.
You could see 2 chainsaws on the table.
They found a mop with blood on it. They also found a piece of carpet with blood on it. And they found a vacuum bag that also had blood on it.
The detectives described the property as almost like the devil's playground.
Now, investigators just need to prove the charred remains and blood evidence belong to Shemaiah Smith.
So police sent the remains to a lab in Connecticut to be analyzed.
Meanwhile, detectives head to the home of Shemaiah's mother.
Since Shemaiah lived there, they wanted to see if the key they found in the fire pit is a match for the home.
When investigators try the key in the front door, a solemn realization sets in.
They put it in the door and they turned the lock. It's like I felt it in my stomach, like a punch.
And soon after, the DNA results confirm everyone's worst fears.
The detectives reached out. I remember it like it was yesterday. He was like, well, we found something and we wanted to let you guys know that Shemaiah is deceased. And I just was crying and crying. I was like, Mom, what happened? She was like, they found her. I was happy. Because I'm like, okay, is she alive? And my mom was like, come here. And she just hugged me and she said, no, she's gone. I just didn't understand why. Like, she was just so quiet and so sweet.
Armed with this new evidence, police are finally ready to take Kenneth Otto into custody. And by now, police have been tailing him for weeks.
In that time, his wife filed for divorce and Kim was spiraling.
We had a pretty good idea that Mr. Otto knew that his time was coming, and we were watching him. We had surveillance teams on him.
He called his lawyer and said that he felt like some guys was following him. So he thought it was Shemaiah's family, but it was the actual detectives following him.
As investigators prepare to pull Ken over and make the arrest, he goes into panic mode.
He was driving extremely erratically, running red lights, taking quick turns.
He was trying to get away.
7. Murder suspect Kenneth Otto is evading East Hartford police after they confirm the human remains found on his property belong to missing 22-year-old Shemaiah Smith.
Like, it was evident at that point he knew the cat was out the bag, as they say. It was up for him.
He was driving extremely erratically, running red lights, taking quick turns.
He was trying to get away.
Police follow Ken all the way to Bradley International Airport.
It seems he's trying to flee out of state, but police are able to surround him in the parking lot.
Oh, the police! Please, put your hands up!
Investigator Olson had the honor of slapping the handcuffs on him. He's the guy that gets to say, Mr. Otto, you are under arrest for murder.
You have the wrong guy. I didn't do anything.
Even after he's arrested, Ken still won't admit that he had anything to do with Shemaiah Smith's murder.
Regardless, investigators search his vehicle for any other potential evidence.
He had about $10,000 in cash. He also had Canadian currency and his passport.
So investigators believe he wasn't just trying to flee out of state, he was trying to flee to Canada.
They also discovered he had erectile dysfunction medication, an escort service card, as well as a bag with women's jewelry.
That made them think, could Shemaya have not been the first victim? Maybe those were trophies.
I think that he has done it before. The way he did it to my sister, there's no way he couldn't have did this before. He just never was caught.
Police were never able to link Ken to any other murders, but the discovery of all that extra women's jewelry in his car when he was trying to flee was certainly unsettling.
Kenneth Otto is charged with 1 count of murder and 2 counts of tampering with evidence.
We booked him, took all his property. He had a very high bond that he could not meet. I want to say at least $1 million, maybe more.
When Ken's trial begins in November of 2008, prosecutors lay out what they believe happened on the afternoon of March 14th.
Some of the most damning things that were brought up by the prosecution was that, by his own admission, he was the last one to see her.
Hey, honey, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Ken never denied that he picked her up to take her to work at 3:30 that afternoon.
But prosecutors assert he never dropped Shemaya off at work like he claimed.
Instead, Ken took her to his 75-acre property in Stafford, Connecticut.
We really don't know exactly what happened inside that camper, but the blood evidence would lead us to believe that's where she was killed.
Since police found those .40 caliber shell casings in the fire pit, it's likely that Shemaya was shot to death.
But that was never conclusively proven forensically.
And the murder weapon was never officially located.
But one thing is clear. Ken burned Shemaya's remains in the fire pit on his property.
Everything that he tried to get rid of, the house key, the shell casings, and of course the human remains, was enough to prove that he killed Shemaya.
But when it's their turn, Ken's defense team argues the evidence located on their client's property means nothing.
He had one of the most expensive defense lawyers in the area.
He has some pretty good lawyers. I didn't understand why would someone represent somebody like that, but hey, you have to make your money.
Defense brought up the fact that there were no witnesses to this crime.
They argue someone else could have killed Shemaya and disposed of her on Ken's property to frame him.
And there's one other problem with the prosecution's case.
They never found out motive. Why did she die? Why did this happen? It's a mystery.
The defense argues that if the prosecution doesn't have a motive, and if they can't prove the circumstances under which Shemaya died, how can they prove Ken killed her?
The prosecution is prepared to answer that question.
Prosecutors explain to the jury that they don't have to prove motive or exactly how Shemaya died in order to prove Ken was her killer. Sometimes certain details in murder cases remain a mystery.
But in this case, everything points to Ken.
Even with his motive still a mystery, when all is said and done, Ken's fate is left in the hands of the jury.
On December 9th, 2008, the jury in Hartford found Kenneth Otto guilty of murder and 2 counts of tampering with evidence.
He received 60 years. So that's basically life sentence all day long. He ain't coming out of there.
We all kind of screamed in the courtroom and was crying. It was just a sign of relief and justice.
When Monique reads her victim's impact statement, Ken remains stone cold.
He showed absolutely no emotions. He had a smirk on his face the whole time. He didn't speak, even when I was asking questions like why, what was her last words, what did she say? He said absolutely nothing. He just sat there with a smirk on his face.
For Monique and all of Shemaya's loved ones, the question of why continues to linger.
It's still a lot of questions. Still to this day, I have questions that I wish could be answered.
I'm still intrigued that they don't know anything about motive. You'd think that all this time he's in prison, he'd at some point say, you know, let me just come clean and, you know, he's in jail anyway. But no, he never did.
If my sister was here today, I'll just hold her close and wouldn't want her to, just wouldn't let her go.
I miss her. I wish she was here to see my kids. I wish she was here to see how much I've grown. I just wish that she was here to just witness so much.
On the evening of February 13th, still 2000, life in the small community of Shelby, North Carolina, appeared ordinary. Families settled into their homes after the weekend. Children prepared for another week of school, and few could have imagined that within hours one of the state's most enduring mysteries would begin. 9-year-old Asha Jaquilla Degree was known by relatives, teachers, and neighbors as a quiet, responsible child. She lived with her parents, Harold and Iquilla Degree, and her older brother O'Brien, in a close-knit neighborhood where people generally felt safe. There was no indication that she was planning to leave home or that she faced any known immediate danger. The weekend before her disappearance had been uneventful. Asha attended church, spent time with her family, and participated in youth basketball activities. Although she had been disappointed after fouling out of a basketball game, those around her described the moment as a normal childhood experience rather than an event that suggested deeper distress. Friends and family later recalled that she behaved much as she always had. During the evening of February 13th, a storm moved through the area, bringing heavy rain and strong winds. At one point, a vehicle accident caused a temporary power outage affecting the Degree family's neighborhood. Electricity was restored later that night, and the family eventually went to bed. According to accounts later provided by investigators, Asha shared a bedroom with her brother. Their parents checked on the children before retiring for the night. Sometime during the early hours of February 14th, something changed. Investigators believe Asha left the house on foot sometime between approximately 2:30 and 3:30 a.m. The exact circumstances remain unknown. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle inside the home, and nothing to indicate that someone had broken into the residence. Exactly why she left, whether she intended to meet someone or whether she expected to return, has never been established publicly. As dawn approached, the Degree family realized Asha was missing. What began as a frantic search inside the home quickly expanded into a neighborhood search and then into a major law enforcement investigation. Officers from the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office responded, joined by state investigators, search teams, volunteers, and eventually federal authorities. Time was critical, especially given the weather conditions overnight. One of the earliest developments in the investigation came from motorists traveling along North Carolina Highway 18. Two drivers independently reported seeing what appeared to be a young child walking south along the highway during the early morning darkness. Because of the severe weather, one driver initially assumed the figure might be an adult of short stature. As he approached more closely, he became concerned that it was in fact a child. According to public accounts, when one motorist turned his vehicle around in an attempt to check on the child, the individual reportedly left the roadside and disappeared into nearby woods. These reported sightings have remained among the most significant publicly known pieces of information in the case. Search teams focused considerable attention on the area near where the child had reportedly been seen. Investigators recovered several items that they believed could have belonged to Asha, including personal belongings found in a storage shed on nearby property. Public reporting indicates that these discoveries suggested she may have briefly sought shelter there before continuing on. Exactly what occurred afterward remains unknown. As the search expanded, hundreds of volunteers combed fields, wooded areas, waterways, and roadsides. Dogs, helicopters, and specialized search personnel were deployed. Despite the scale of the effort, no confirmed trace of Asha herself was found during those crucial first days. The disappearance quickly attracted widespread media attention across North Carolina. A 9-year-old child leaving home alone during a storm in the middle of the night was an extraordinarily unusual set of circumstances. Investigators carefully interviewed family members, friends, teachers, neighbors, and anyone who might have had contact with Asha in the days leading up to her disappearance. Authorities repeatedly stated that they found no evidence publicly linking her immediate family to her disappearance, and her parents have consistently maintained that they do not know why she left home. Over the years, the investigation has remained active. Detectives have pursued numerous leads, conducted repeated interviews, re-examined physical evidence as forensic science advanced, and appealed to the public for information. The case has also benefited from national attention through organizations dedicated to missing and exploited children. In August 2001, more than a year after Asha disappeared, an important development occurred. Construction workers uncovered a backpack that investigators later identified as belonging to Asha. It had been buried inside plastic bags near Morganton, North Carolina, approximately 26 miles from her home. The location immediately raised new questions. How had the backpack traveled such a distance? Who placed it there? Why was it carefully wrapped before being buried? Authorities have never publicly answered those questions, and the discovery remains one of the most puzzling pieces of physical evidence in the investigation. As forensic technology evolved, investigators periodically re-examined evidence collected during the original investigation. Law enforcement agencies also released updated information when they believed it could generate new leads. Public appeals emphasized that even seemingly insignificant memories from February 2000 could prove valuable decades later. Although investigators have announced significant investigative developments over the years, including renewed searches and appeals connected to potential vehicles of interest, the disappearance of Asha Degree remains unsolved. Authorities continue to encourage anyone with relevant information to come forward, emphasizing that even after many years, credible information can help resolve long-standing missing person cases. More than 2 decades later, Asha Degree's disappearance remains one of North Carolina's most enduring mysteries, not because of speculation, but because so many fundamental questions remain unanswered. What prompted a 9-year-old to leave the safety of her home before dawn during a storm? Did she leave voluntarily with a specific destination in mind, or did events unfold after she stepped outside? Who, if anyone, encountered her after the reported highway sightings? These questions continue to guide investigators as they seek answers grounded in evidence rather than assumption. Within hours of Asha Degree being reported missing on February 14, 2000, the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office transformed what initially appeared to be a local missing child report into a large-scale search operation. Officers understood that the first day would be critical. Search teams spread across the neighborhood surrounding the Degree family's home, examining yards, nearby woods, drainage ditches, fields, and roadsides. Volunteers from the community joined deputies, firefighters, and rescue personnel, while tracking dogs and helicopters were brought in to assist. Despite the extensive effort, no confirmed trace of Asha herself was located. The weather presented significant challenges. Heavy rain and strong winds during the night likely affected potential physical evidence, making it more difficult for investigators to identify footprints or preserve other traces. Search coordinators nevertheless documented the areas already covered, ensuring that locations were searched methodically rather than repeatedly by different teams. One of the earliest and most significant leads came from motorists traveling along North Carolina Highway 18 during the early morning hours. 2 independent drivers later reported seeing what they believed to be a young child walking south along the highway. because the weather was poor and visibility limited. One witness initially assumed the figure was an adult. After realizing the individual appeared to be a child, the driver reportedly turned around to check on her. According to public statements by investigators, the child was then seen leaving the roadside and moving toward nearby woods. Authorities have long considered these reported sightings among the most important publicly known elements of the investigation. Investigators carefully evaluated the consistency of the witness accounts. Although neither driver stopped long enough to identify the child with certainty, the descriptions generally matched Asha's age, size, clothing, location, and the approximate timeline during which investigators believe she left home. Because the witnesses came forward independently, detectives viewed the reports as potentially significant. The search soon concentrated on areas near where the child had reportedly been seen. On property close to Highway 18, investigators recovered several items believed to have belonged to Asha from a storage shed. Public reporting has indicated that these included personal belongings associated with her. Investigators concluded that the discovery suggested she may have briefly entered or approached the shed before leaving the area. Exactly why she would have done so remains unknown. Law enforcement also conducted extensive interviews. Detectives spoke with family members, neighbors, classmates, teachers, church members, basketball coaches, and anyone who might have interacted with Asha in the days before she disappeared. Investigators sought to establish whether anyone had noticed unusual behavior, conversations, or plans. Publicly released information has consistently indicated that no evidence emerged showing that Asha had expressed an intention to run away or that she was experiencing problems that would clearly explain her departure. The investigation also included a detailed examination of the Degree family home. Detectives searched for signs of forced entry, evidence of violence, or indications that someone had entered during the night. Public statements from investigators have indicated that no such evidence was found. Authorities have repeatedly said that they found no publicly disclosed evidence suggesting the home was the scene of an abduction. As media attention increased, tips began arriving from across North Carolina and beyond. Detectives evaluated hundreds of reports from people who believed they had seen Asha or possessed information about her disappearance. As is common in major missing person investigations, many leads ultimately could not be substantiated, while others required considerable investigative resources before being ruled out. The Federal Bureau of Investigation joined state and local authorities as the investigation expanded. The involvement of federal resources provided additional forensic expertise, analytical support, and access to national databases used to compare information from other missing person and criminal investigations. Cooperation between agencies became a defining feature of the case and has continued for decades. Throughout the investigation, law enforcement officials emphasized the importance of relying on evidence rather than speculation. Numerous theories emerged publicly, ranging from the possibility that Asha left home voluntarily to suggestions that she encountered another person after leaving the house. However, investigators have consistently avoided endorsing explanations not supported by available evidence. As months passed without answers, the investigation shifted from an emergency search to a long-term missing child case. Detectives preserved physical evidence, maintained contact with witnesses, and periodically re-examined information as investigative techniques improved. They also encouraged the public to continue reporting information, recognizing that memories can change and previously overlooked details sometimes become significant years later. The case took a major turn in August 2001 when construction workers discovered a backpack later identified as belonging to Asha, found near Morganton, North Carolina, approximately 26 miles from her home. The backpack had been wrapped in plastic bags before being buried. The careful packaging immediately distinguished the discovery from an item simply discarded by chance. Investigators publicly confirmed that the backpack belonged to Asha, but did not disclose every item it contained, explaining that withholding certain details could help evaluate future tips. The backpack's location created new investigative questions. Authorities sought to determine how it had traveled such a considerable distance and who had placed it there. The discovery prompted renewed interviews, additional forensic examinations, and another round of public appeals. Despite these efforts, investigators did not publicly identify a suspect or explain how the backpack came to be buried. Over the years, detectives have repeatedly revisited the case as advances in forensic science created new investigative opportunities. Physical evidence has been re-examined using updated laboratory techniques, and investigators have continued to assess whether emerging technologies might yield additional information. Law enforcement has also released new appeals when they believe specific details could generate credible leads. Although the disappearance remains unsolved, authorities have consistently emphasized that the investigation is active. They continue to encourage anyone with information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, to contact investigators. For law enforcement, the case represents an ongoing effort to establish a complete evidence-based account of what happened after Asha Degree left her home during the early hours of February 14th, SIL 2000. Every verified fact remains part of that effort, while many of the most important questions continue to await answers grounded in evidence rather than speculation. As the years passed without a resolution, the disappearance of Asha Degree evolved from an urgent missing child investigation into one of North Carolina's most enduring cold cases. Detectives from the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, working alongside the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other partners, continued to review evidence collected during the original investigation. Rather than treating the case as dormant, investigators periodically re-examined witness statements, physical evidence, and investigative records in light of advances in forensic science and changes in investigative techniques. One of the most significant developments remained the discovery of Asha's backpack in August 2001. Construction workers uncovered it in Burke County, approximately 26 miles from her home in Shelby. Investigators confirmed that the backpack belonged to Asha and stated that it had been wrapped in plastic bags before being buried. The location and condition of the backpack suggested that it had been deliberately concealed rather than accidentally discarded. However, authorities have never publicly disclosed all of the forensic findings associated with the backpack, explaining that some information has been withheld to preserve the integrity of the investigation and to help assess the credibility of future tips. Investigators have also been selective about the evidence released to the public. In many long-running missing person investigations, law enforcement intentionally withholds certain details that are known only to investigators and, potentially, to the person responsible. This practice allows detectives to compare future statements against information that has never been made public. While this approach can be frustrating for observers, it is a common investigative strategy intended to protect the case. As forensic science advanced during the 2000s and 2010s, authorities reviewed whether new laboratory methods could yield additional information from evidence collected years earlier. Improvements in DNA analysis, trace evidence examination, and digital investigative techniques have transformed many historical investigations. Although officials have not publicly detailed the results of every forensic review in Asha Degree's case, they have repeatedly stated that they continue to evaluate evidence using the best available technology. Public appeals remained another important part of the investigation. Law enforcement regularly asked anyone with information, even details that might have seemed insignificant decades earlier, to come forward. Detectives have often noted that memories can change over time and that witnesses may become more willing to speak as circumstances in their own lives evolve. Information that once appeared unimportant can sometimes take on new significance when considered alongside evidence developed years later. Investigators have also continued to examine the reported sightings of a child walking along North Carolina Highway 18 during the early morning hours of February 14th, SIL 2000A. Those witness accounts remain among the most significant publicly known events in the timeline. Although the observations cannot answer what happened after the child left the roadway, they provide investigators with an important reference point in reconstructing the sequence of events. Over the years, the case has received attention from national organizations dedicated to missing and exploited children. Age-progressed images have been produced to help illustrate what Asha might have looked like as she grew older. These images are intended to encourage recognition while acknowledging that they are investigative tools rather than exact predictions of appearance. Law enforcement has also released additional information when investigators believed it could generate new leads. In 2016, officials asked the public for help identifying a vehicle that they believed might be relevant to the investigation. They described it as an early 1970 S green Lincoln Continental Mark AV or a similar full-size vehicle. Authorities emphasized that they were seeking information about the vehicle because it might assist the investigation, but they did not publicly state how it was connected to the case or whether its occupants were considered witnesses, persons of interest, or otherwise. As with other aspects of the investigation, detectives were careful not to disclose conclusions unsupported by publicly available evidence. In subsequent years, investigators conducted additional searches based on information developed during the investigation. Search warrants and evidence collection efforts reflected law enforcement's continued commitment to pursuing credible leads, even decades after Asha disappeared. Officials have consistently emphasized that these investigative activities do not necessarily indicate that a case is close to resolution. Rather, they demonstrate that detectives continue to follow evidence wherever it leads. Throughout the investigation, authorities have urged the public to distinguish between verified information and speculation. Because the case has attracted widespread media attention for more than 2 decades, numerous theories have circulated online and in popular media. Investigators have repeatedly stated that the public should rely on official releases and evidence-based reporting rather than unverified claims. For Asha Degree's family, the passage of time has not diminished the importance of finding answers. Her disappearance continues to be remembered annually by the community, and law enforcement agencies have reaffirmed that the investigation remains active. Officials continue to encourage anyone with credible information to contact investigators, emphasizing that even after many years, new evidence or previously unknown witness information can play a significant role in resolving a missing person case. More than 2 decades after Asha disappeared, the central questions remain unanswered. Investigators continue to seek evidence establishing why she left home, what occurred after the reported highway sightings, how her backpack came to be buried miles away, and who, if anyone, was responsible for her disappearance. Until those questions can be answered through reliable evidence, the case remains one of North Carolina's longest-running active missing child investigations, and efforts to resolve it continue. As the investigation entered its second decade, detectives increasingly relied on the principle that cold cases are not static. Even when no new witnesses emerge and no arrests are made, advances in forensic science, data analysis, and investigative methodology can provide opportunities that did not exist when a case was first investigated. For the agencies involved in Asha Degree's disappearance, preserving evidence and maintaining detailed investigative records became as important as pursuing new leads. One of the defining characteristics of long-running investigations is the periodic review of case files. Detectives who were not part of the original investigation may be assigned to examine reports with fresh perspectives. They compare witness statements, timelines, forensic findings, and evidence inventories to determine whether overlooked details or inconsistencies warrant additional inquiry. This process is common in unresolved missing person investigations and can identify new avenues for follow-up without assuming earlier investigators made errors. Physical evidence collected during the original investigation has also been subject to re-evaluation as laboratory technology has improved. Modern DNA analysis is significantly more sensitive than techniques available in 2000, allowing forensic laboratories to recover genetic material from much smaller or more degraded samples. Investigators have not publicly disclosed the results of every forensic examination conducted in Asha Degree's case, but law enforcement has stated that evidence continues to be reviewed using current scientific methods when appropriate. Digital investigative tools have also changed substantially over the past 2 decades. Although mobile phones, surveillance cameras, and location data were far less common in 2000 than they are today, investigators have benefited from improved databases that allow information to be compared across jurisdictions. Missing person records, criminal intelligence, and forensic evidence can now be analyzed more efficiently than when the case began, increasing the possibility that connections between separate investigations may be identified. Another important aspect of the investigation has been the management of public information. Law enforcement agencies have consistently balanced transparency with the need to protect investigative integrity. Certain details have been released to encourage public assistance, while other information has intentionally remained confidential. This practice helps detectives evaluate future tips by comparing statements from witnesses or persons of interest with facts known only to investigators. Public appeals have remained a recurring feature of the case. Detectives have emphasized that memories can change over time and that people who were reluctant to speak years earlier may now be willing to come forward. They have also noted that individuals may not have recognized the significance of what they observed in February 2000 until much later. For that reason, investigators continue to encourage anyone with credible information to contact law enforcement, regardless of how much time has passed. The case has also drawn sustained attention from organizations specializing in missing and exploited children. These organizations assist by distributing age-progressed images, increasing public awareness, and supporting investigative efforts. While such images are investigative tools rather than predictions of a person's exact appearance, they can help generate leads if someone recognizes features or remembers relevant information. Investigators have repeatedly cautioned against treating speculation as evidence. Over the years, numerous theories have circulated in online discussions, documentaries, and social media. Some suggest voluntary departure, others propose the involvement of an unknown offender, and still others rely on assumptions unsupported by publicly available facts. Law enforcement has consistently encouraged the public to distinguish between verified investigative information and unverified claims. Cold case investigations often require patience rather than dramatic breakthroughs. Cases solved decades after the original crime have demonstrated that new witnesses, improved forensic methods, or re-examined evidence can eventually provide answers. While there has been no public resolution in Asha Degree's disappearance, investigators have continued to state that the case remains active and that credible information is still being evaluated. For Asha Degree's family, the passage of time has not diminished the search for answers. Public anniversaries of her disappearance continue to serve as opportunities for investigators to renew appeals for information and remind the community that the investigation remains open. The central objective has remained unchanged since February 2000 to establish, through reliable evidence, what happened after Asha left her home and to determine the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. More than 2 decades later, the case illustrates both the challenges and the persistence associated with unresolved missing person investigations. Detectives continue to preserve evidence, review information, evaluate new leads, and apply advances in forensic science whenever possible. Until evidence provides definitive answers, the investigation remains an active effort grounded in documented facts rather than speculation. As the years passed, Asha Degree's disappearance became one of North Carolina's most recognized unresolved missing person investigations. What began as an urgent local search developed into a case followed by national organizations, journalists, researchers, and members of the public. Despite widespread attention, investigators have consistently emphasized that media interest does not replace evidence. Every reported lead, witness statement, and forensic result must be evaluated according to established investigative standards before it can influence the direction of the case. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office has remained the lead investigative agency, working in partnership with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other law enforcement organizations when appropriate. This multi-agency approach reflects the complexity of long-term missing person investigations, where expertise in forensic science, behavioral analysis, and evidence management may be required over many years. One of the continuing challenges has been balancing public awareness with investigative confidentiality. Detectives have released selected information they believed could encourage witnesses to come forward while withholding other details known only to investigators. This approach is widely used in unresolved criminal investigations because undisclosed facts can help assess the credibility of future statements. If an individual provides information that matches details never released publicly, investigators can evaluate that information more effectively. Public interest has generated thousands of discussions, articles, podcasts, and documentaries about the case. While many of these productions have accurately summarized publicly available information, others have included speculation or presented theories that have not been supported by official evidence. Investigators have repeatedly encouraged the public to rely on verified information released by law enforcement rather than assumptions circulating through social media or unofficial sources. The role of community members has remained significant throughout the investigation. Volunteers participated extensively during the initial search, and local residents have continued to support annual awareness efforts. Missing person investigations often depend on cooperation between investigators and the public, particularly when years have passed and new witnesses may remember previously overlooked details. Detectives have stated that information considered insignificant at the time may later become relevant when combined with other evidence. Advances in forensic science have continued to influence investigative strategy. Although authorities have not publicly described every laboratory examination conducted in the case, they have acknowledged that evidence has been reviewed using improved forensic methods as technology has evolved. Across the United States, improvements in DNA analysis, digital evidence management, and forensic databases have helped resolve numerous historical investigations. These developments have encouraged investigators to preserve evidence carefully, recognizing that future scientific advances may reveal information that current methods cannot. Investigators have also continued to review historical witness interviews. Memories can change over time, and individuals may become more willing to speak years after an event. Detectives often compare original statements with later interviews to determine whether additional context or newly remembered details warrant further investigation. This process is a routine component of long-term cold case work and does not necessarily indicate that previous interviews were inaccurate. The discovery of Asha Degree's backpack in Burke County remains one of the most significant publicly known pieces of physical evidence. Law enforcement has confirmed that the backpack belonged to Asha and that it was recovered after being wrapped in plastic bags. However, investigators have deliberately withheld certain information regarding the evidence recovered with the backpack, explaining that preserving confidential details remains important to the investigation. Throughout the years, officials have continued to emphasize that the case is active rather than closed. Search warrants, evidence reviews, public appeals, and renewed investigative efforts demonstrate that detectives continue to examine credible leads. At the same time, law enforcement has been careful not to interpret investigative activity as evidence that a resolution is imminent. In complex missing person investigations, substantial investigative work may occur without immediate public results. For Asha Degree's family, the absence of definitive answers has meant living with uncertainty for more than 2 decades. Public statements by family members have consistently expressed hope that someone with relevant information will come forward. Law enforcement has echoed that message, emphasizing that even after many years, truthful and verifiable information can contribute meaningfully to an investigation. The disappearance continues to illustrate the challenges associated with unresolved missing child cases. Investigators must distinguish between reliable evidence and speculation, preserve physical evidence for future examination, and remain prepared to evaluate new information whenever it emerges. Although many questions remain unanswered, authorities continue to pursue the case using established investigative methods, updated forensic technology, and cooperation across multiple agencies. Today, the investigation remains open. Detectives continue to encourage anyone with first-hand knowledge or credible information about the events surrounding Asha Degree's disappearance to contact law enforcement until evidence establishes what occurred after she left her home in the early morning hours of February 14, 2000. The case will remain an active missing person investigation dedicated to determining the facts through careful, evidence-based inquiry. More than 2 decades after Asha Degree disappeared, investigators continue to emphasize that the case remained active. Rather than considering the passage of time an obstacle, law enforcement agencies treated advances in investigative science and new public information as opportunities to revisit evidence collected in 2000. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, working with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other partners, periodically reviewed evidence, witness statements, and investigative records. Cold case investigations often benefit from improvements in forensic technology. Methods for recovering and analyzing DNA, documenting trace evidence, and comparing information across national databases have advanced significantly since the original investigation. Although authorities have not publicly disclosed the results of every forensic examination conducted in Asha Degree's case, they have repeatedly stated that evidence continues to be evaluated using modern scientific techniques whenever appropriate. Investigators have also continued to assess previously collected witness statements. This process is common in long-running investigations because memories sometimes become clearer in context, and individuals who were once reluctant to speak may later decide to provide information. Detectives compare new interviews with historical records to identify consistencies, discrepancies, or details that may warrant additional inquiry. In recent years, law enforcement has conducted further searches connected to the investigation. Public announcements have described these searches as part of ongoing efforts to follow up on information developed during the case. Officials have generally declined to discuss the specific evidence that prompted investigative activity, explaining that protecting the integrity of the investigation remains essential. Search activity alone should not be interpreted as evidence that investigators have reached conclusions regarding what happened. Authorities have also renewed public appeals for information. Investigators have stressed that even seemingly minor observations from February 2000 could become important when considered alongside evidence collected over many years. This approach reflects a broader principle of cold casework. Information that appears insignificant in isolation may acquire greater meaning when combined with other verified facts. Throughout the investigation, law enforcement has distinguished between evidence and speculation. Numerous theories have circulated publicly regarding why Asha left home and what may have happened afterward. Investigators have consistently advised that these theories should not be treated as established fact unless supported by reliable evidence. Official statements have instead focused on documented investigative findings and the need for credible information from witnesses. The case has remained a priority for organizations dedicated to missing and exploited children. These organizations continue to assist through public awareness campaigns, distribution of updated photographs and age-progressed images, and support for investigative outreach. Such efforts are intended to encourage recognition and generate new leads while acknowledging that they do not establish what ultimately happened. Investigators have also highlighted the importance of preserving evidence for future scientific analysis. Numerous cold cases in the United States have been solved decades after the original crime through advances in forensic methods. While no comparable public resolution has occurred in Asha Degree's case, investigators have indicated that maintaining evidence in a condition suitable for future examination remains an important part of their strategy. For Asha Degree's family, the investigation has represented a continuing search for factual answers rather than speculation. Public statements have consistently expressed hope that someone with relevant knowledge will eventually come forward. Law enforcement has echoed that message, noting that investigations can change significantly when a credible witness decides to speak or when new forensic opportunities emerge. As of today, the disappearance remains unresolved. Authorities continue to investigate, review evidence, and encourage anyone with first-hand or verifiable information to contact law enforcement. The central objective remains unchanged: to establish, through reliable evidence, what occurred after Asha Degree left her home during the early morning hours of February 14, 2000, and to provide answers grounded in documented fact. More than 2 decades after Asha Degree disappeared, investigators continue to describe the case as an active investigation rather than a closed file. Although the passage of time has made locating witnesses and preserving memories more challenging, advances in forensic science and investigative techniques have created new opportunities to re-examine evidence collected during the original investigation. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office remains the lead agency, working in coordination with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other law enforcement partners. Officials have repeatedly stated that investigators continue to review evidence, assess new information, and pursue credible leads as they arise. One of the defining characteristics of the case has been law enforcement's decision to keep certain investigative details confidential. Authorities have explained that withholding some information helps investigators evaluate future witness statements and protects the integrity of the investigation. This practice is common in unresolved missing person and homicide investigations, where undisclosed facts can be valuable in assessing the credibility of tips. In recent years, investigators have undertaken additional investigative activity, including searches and the execution of search warrants connected to information developed during the case. Public statements have emphasized that these actions represent routine investigative work rather than confirmation of any specific theory. Law enforcement has generally declined to discuss the evidence supporting these activities while the investigation remains ongoing. Detectives have also continued to encourage the public to report information, even if it seems insignificant. Experience from other long-term investigations has shown that seemingly minor details can become important when combined with physical evidence or other witness accounts. Investigators have stressed that they remain interested in first-hand observations, documented information, and credible testimony related to the events surrounding February 14th SIL 2000A. The case has benefited from advances in forensic science since the original investigation began. Modern DNA analysis, improvements in trace evidence examination, and expanded national databases have transformed many historical investigations across the United States. Although authorities have not publicly disclosed all forensic findings in Asha Degree's case, they have indicated that evidence is reviewed as new scientific methods become available. Public interest has remained strong over the years. National organizations dedicated to missing children continue to include Asha Degree in awareness campaigns, while journalists and documentary producers have periodically revisited the case. Law enforcement has welcomed responsible public attention, but has also cautioned against treating speculation or internet discussions as established fact. Officials have consistently emphasized that the investigation relies on evidence rather than assumptions. Numerous theories have circulated regarding why Asha left her home, whom she may have encountered, and what happened afterward. However, investigators have not publicly endorsed explanations that are unsupported by reliable evidence. Their focus has remained on information that can be independently verified through witness testimony, forensic examination, or documented investigative findings. For Asha Degree's family, each passing year has brought continued hope that the investigation will eventually provide answers. Public statements from family members have consistently expressed appreciation for ongoing investigative efforts and for members of the public who continue to keep the case in mind. Law enforcement has likewise reaffirmed its commitment to pursuing every credible lead. As the investigation continues, authorities maintain the same objective that guided the search in February 2000, determining, through verifiable evidence, what happened after Asha Degree left her home. While many questions remain unanswered, investigators have repeatedly stated that they have not stopped working the case and that they continue to encourage anyone with relevant information to contact law enforcement. The case remains one of North Carolina's longest-running active missing child investigations, and efforts to establish the facts continue. By the mid-2020s, Asha Degree's disappearance had become more than an unresolved investigation. It had become a case study in the challenges of long-term missing child investigations and the importance of preserving evidence, maintaining investigative continuity, and remaining open to new information. More than 2 decades after she disappeared, the investigation continued to evolve as law enforcement agencies revisited evidence and evaluated new leads. One of the defining lessons from the case has been the importance of evidence preservation. Investigators retained physical evidence collected during the original investigation with the understanding that future scientific advances might reveal information unavailable in 2000. This approach reflects a broader change in criminal investigations, where improvements in forensic science have resolved numerous historical cases many years after the original events. Another lesson concerns the value of interagency cooperation. Throughout the investigation, the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office has worked alongside the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other organizations with expertise in forensic analysis, missing person investigations, and evidence management. Such collaboration allows agencies to combine specialized resources while maintaining a coordinated investigative strategy. The case has also demonstrated the role of responsible public participation. Investigators have consistently encouraged witnesses to report first-hand information while cautioning against speculation. In long-running investigations, rumors can consume valuable investigative resources if they are mistaken for evidence. Law enforcement has therefore emphasized the distinction between verified facts, witness testimony, forensic findings, and unconfirmed theories. Public awareness has remained an important investigative tool. Organizations dedicated to missing and exploited children have continued to distribute information about Asha Degree, including age-progressed images intended to help people recognize her if she were still alive. These images are investigative aids rather than predictions, but they can generate leads by prompting individuals to reconsider memories or observations that previously seemed unrelated. Advances in forensic science continue to influence investigative planning. Techniques for DNA analysis, trace evidence examination, and digital record comparison have become substantially more sophisticated since the investigation began. Although authorities have not publicly disclosed all forensic testing performed in the case, they have repeatedly stated that evidence is re-examined as appropriate when new scientific methods become available. Investigators have also continued to review witness statements and historical case records. Cold case investigations frequently involve comparing earlier interviews with later information to identify patterns, inconsistencies, or details that may not have appeared significant at the time. This process reflects the understanding that investigations can benefit from fresh analysis without altering the factual record established during the original inquiry. Throughout the years, officials have remained careful in their public communications. They have disclosed information intended to assist the investigation while withholding other details to preserve investigative integrity. This practice helps detectives evaluate future tips by comparing statements against facts that have not been publicly released. For the Degree family, the investigation has always centered on obtaining factual answers. Public statements over the years have reflected a continued hope that someone with relevant knowledge will come forward. Law enforcement has likewise maintained that credible information, regardless of how much time has passed, may still contribute to resolving the case. Today, Asha Degree's disappearance remains an active missing person investigation. Detectives continue to review evidence, assess new information, and apply advances in forensic science where appropriate. While many questions remain unanswered, the investigation illustrates the persistence required in long-term missing child cases and the importance of grounding every investigative decision in verifiable evidence. Authorities continue to encourage anyone with first-hand or credible information related to the events of February 14th, SIL 2000 to contact law enforcement, emphasizing that even decades later, reliable evidence can play a critical role in establishing the facts. Asha Degree's disappearance illustrates many of the challenges investigators face in long-term missing person investigations. Contrary to popular portrayals, unresolved cases do not necessarily remain open because investigators have stopped working on them. In many instances, the primary obstacle is the absence of sufficient evidence to establish what occurred or to support criminal charges. Detectives must base investigative decisions on verifiable facts, even when public interest is high and speculation is widespread. One of the most difficult aspects of any missing child investigation is the passage of time. Physical evidence may deteriorate despite careful preservation. Environmental conditions can affect recovery efforts, and witnesses' memories naturally become less precise. In Asha Degree's case, severe weather during the early hours of February 14th, SIL 2000 complicated the initial search. Heavy rain and wind may have affected the preservation of evidence outdoors, making it more difficult for investigators to reconstruct events. Investigators have therefore relied on a combination of physical evidence, documented witness accounts, and continuing forensic review. The reported sightings along North Carolina Highway 18 remain among the most significant publicly known elements of the case because they provide investigators with a potential timeline after Asha left home. However, those sightings alone cannot explain what happened afterward, underscoring the limits of even credible witness testimony when corroborating evidence is unavailable. Another challenge is evaluating information received over many years. High-profile investigations often generate thousands of tips from members of the public. Detectives must assess each report, compare it with existing evidence, and determine whether additional investigation is warranted. While many tips ultimately cannot be substantiated, investigators have emphasized that even information received years later can prove valuable if it is supported by reliable evidence. The investigation has also demonstrated the importance of preserving evidence for future scientific analysis. Advances in DNA technology and other forensic disciplines have helped solve numerous historical cases across the United States. Although authorities have not publicly announced a comparable breakthrough in Asha Degree's disappearance, they have stated that evidence continues to be reviewed as investigative methods evolve. Law enforcement has consistently distinguished between evidence and speculation. Over the years, many theories have circulated through media reports, online discussions, and independent commentary. Officials have repeatedly advised that these theories should not be treated as established fact unless supported by credible evidence. Maintaining that distinction is essential both to the integrity of the investigation and to the fair evaluation of future leads. The continued involvement of multiple agencies reflects the long-term commitment to resolving the case. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other partners have maintained cooperation in reviewing evidence and pursuing investigative opportunities. This collaborative approach allows specialists in forensic science, intelligence analysis, and missing person investigations to contribute their expertise as needed. Public awareness has also remained an important component of the investigation. Organizations supporting missing and exploited children continue to distribute information about the case and encourage anyone with first-hand knowledge to contact law enforcement. Investigators have stressed that even details that once appeared insignificant may become meaningful when combined with newly developed evidence or improved forensic analysis. Although the disappearance remains unresolved, investigators continue to describe it as an active case rather than a closed historical investigation. They have repeatedly stated that they remain committed to identifying the facts through evidence-based inquiry. For Asha Degree's family and the wider community, that commitment represents the ongoing effort to determine what happened after she left her home in the early morning hours of February 14th, SIL 2000 I. Until those questions can be answered through reliable evidence, the investigation continues. Although more than 2 decades have passed since Asha Degree disappeared, investigators continue to approach the case as an active investigation rather than a historical record. One reason is that unresolved missing person cases can change significantly when new evidence emerges or when existing evidence is examined using improved forensic methods. Across the United States, numerous long-term investigations have been resolved years or even decades after the original events because advances in science or newly available information allowed detectives to answer questions that once seemed impossible. Cold case review is a structured investigative process rather than a single event. Detectives periodically revisit witness interviews, timelines, evidence inventories, forensic reports, and investigative decisions made during the original inquiry. This review is intended to determine whether new technology, additional context, or previously unavailable information could affect the investigation. It does not imply that earlier investigators acted improperly. Instead, it reflects the understanding that investigative tools and scientific capabilities continue to improve. In Asha Degree's case, authorities have repeatedly confirmed that physical evidence has been preserved and re-evaluated when appropriate. While officials have not publicly disclosed the results of every forensic examination, they have emphasized that maintaining evidence allows future scientific developments to be applied if warranted. The preservation of evidence is considered a fundamental principle in unresolved investigations because techniques unavailable at the time of the disappearance may later provide meaningful results. Investigators have also continued to evaluate witness information. Human memory is not static, and individuals sometimes recall additional details years after an event, particularly when prompted by renewed public attention or official appeals. Law enforcement therefore continues to encourage anyone with first-hand knowledge of events surrounding February 14th, SIL 2000, to come forward, regardless of how much time has passed. The role of interagency cooperation has remained significant throughout the investigation. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office has worked alongside the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other organizations with expertise in forensic science, evidence analysis, and missing person investigations. Such cooperation enables agencies to share resources, compare information across jurisdictions, and evaluate evidence using specialized expertise. Authorities have consistently distinguished between verified information and public speculation. Over the years, numerous theories have circulated regarding why Asha left home and what may have happened afterward. Investigators have not publicly endorsed explanations that are unsupported by evidence. Instead, Official statements have focused on documented investigative findings and the need for credible information that can be independently verified. The case has also highlighted the importance of public awareness campaigns. National organizations dedicated to missing and exploited children continue to feature Asha Degree's case in educational materials and outreach efforts. Age-progressed images have been produced to assist recognition, while investigators periodically renew appeals for information. These efforts are intended to encourage witnesses to come forward and to ensure that the case remains visible to the public. Another lesson from the investigation is the importance of evidence management. In long-running cases, preserving documentation, maintaining accurate chain of custody records, and carefully cataloging physical evidence are essential. These procedures help ensure that evidence remains suitable for future examination and, if necessary, for presentation in court should the investigation ultimately identify a responsible individual. For investigators, the objective has remained consistent since February 2000: determine what happened through reliable evidence rather than assumption. Although many questions remain unanswered, the investigation continues to reflect the principles of modern cold case work: careful evidence preservation, periodic forensic review, interagency cooperation, and continued engagement with the public. As of today, Asha Degree's disappearance remains an active missing person investigation. Law enforcement agencies continue to review information, assess new leads, and encourage anyone with credible first-hand knowledge to contact investigators. Until the available evidence establishes what occurred after Asha left her home, the investigation remains focused on identifying the facts through objective, evidence-based inquiry. One of the consistent themes in the investigation into Asha Degree's disappearance has been the importance of public cooperation. From the first hours after she was reported missing, community members, emergency responders, and law enforcement worked together in an extensive search effort. As the investigation evolved into a long-term missing person case, that partnership shifted from physical search operations to the sharing of information, with investigators continuing to encourage anyone who might possess relevant knowledge to come forward. Law enforcement agencies have repeatedly emphasized that even information which appears insignificant may become important when considered alongside other evidence. In many long-running investigations, a single detail, such as an observation that initially seemed unrelated, has later helped investigators establish timelines, identify witnesses, or corroborate physical evidence. For that reason, officials continue to ask people to report first-hand information rather than assume someone else has already done so. The investigation has also benefited from improvements in information management. Modern case management systems allow investigators to organize and compare witness statements, forensic findings, and historical records more efficiently than was possible in 2000. This capability helps detectives identify patterns, revisit earlier leads, and evaluate whether new information aligns with evidence already collected. Another important aspect of the case has been the distinction between verified evidence and public discussion. Because Asha Degree's disappearance has received national attention for many years, numerous articles, podcasts, documentaries, and online discussions have examined the case. While many of these accurately summarize publicly available information, others include speculation that has not been supported by investigators. Law enforcement has consistently advised that official releases should be regarded as the most reliable source of information about the status of the investigation. Investigators have also highlighted the importance of preserving confidential investigative details. In many unresolved cases, certain facts are intentionally withheld from the public so they can be used to assess the credibility of future witnesses or suspects. If an individual provides information that matches details known only to investigators, that information can be evaluated more effectively. This practice is a standard investigative technique and does not necessarily indicate that authorities possess evidence pointing to a particular conclusion. As forensic science continues to advance, evidence collected during the original investigation may be suitable for additional analysis. Improvements in DNA recovery, trace evidence examination, and analytical technology have contributed to the resolution of many historical investigations across the United States. Although authorities have not publicly announced a forensic breakthrough in Asha Degree's case, they have consistently indicated that evidence is reviewed as technology develops. The case has also underscored the importance of interagency cooperation. Missing person investigations often require expertise from multiple organizations, including local law enforcement, state investigative agencies, federal partners, forensic laboratories, and organizations specializing in missing children. By combining resources and expertise, investigators are better positioned to evaluate evidence and pursue leads that cross jurisdictional boundaries. Public awareness remains a significant investigative tool. Periodic anniversaries of Asha's disappearance provide opportunities for law enforcement to renew appeals for information and remind the public that the case is still active. These announcements are intended not only to maintain visibility, but also to encourage individuals who may have remembered additional details or who now feel able to share information with investigators. Throughout the investigation, officials have remained focused on establishing facts through evidence rather than speculation. While many questions remain unanswered, investigators continue to review information carefully, assess new leads, and preserve evidence for future examination. Their stated objective has remained unchanged since February 2000 to determine what happened to Asha Degree through reliable, verifiable evidence and to provide accurate answers based on the findings of the investigation. More than 2 decades after her disappearance, the case continues to demonstrate the persistence required in unresolved missing person investigations. Advances in science, careful evidence preservation, and continued public cooperation all contribute to the possibility that new information may emerge. Until the available evidence establishes what occurred, investigators continue their work with the understanding that every credible lead deserves careful evaluation. More than 2 decades after Asha Degree disappeared, investigators continue to describe the case as an active missing person investigation. Although no publicly announced resolution has been reached, the investigation has remained open through continued evidence review, periodic public appeals, and collaboration among local, state, and federal agencies. Officials have consistently stated that they remain committed to pursuing credible leads wherever they may lead. From an investigative perspective, several facts are well established through official statements and public records. Asha Degree was reported missing from her family's home in Shelby, North Carolina, during the early morning hours of February 14th. 2000 investigators believe she left the residence on foot sometime before dawn. Some motorists later reported seeing what appeared to be a young girl walking along North Carolina Highway 18 during the early morning hours. Those reported sightings have remained an important part of the publicly known timeline, although they do not explain what occurred afterward. Search efforts conducted immediately after the disappearance involved hundreds of volunteers and numerous law enforcement personnel. Teams searched neighborhoods, wooded areas, fields, waterways, and locations near the reported highway sightings. Search dogs, aircraft, and specialized rescue personnel participated in the effort. Despite these extensive operations, investigators did not locate Asha herself during the initial search period. The discovery of Asha's backpack in August 2001 remains one of the most significant pieces of publicly known physical evidence. Construction workers found the backpack in Burke County, approximately 26 miles from her home. Law enforcement confirmed that the backpack belonged to Asha and stated that it had been wrapped in plastic bags before being recovered. Investigators have not publicly disclosed every forensic detail associated with that evidence, explaining that some information has been withheld to protect the integrity of the investigation and to assist in evaluating future tips. Throughout the investigation, authorities have repeatedly distinguished between verified evidence and public speculation. Numerous theories have emerged over the years regarding why Asha left home and what may have happened after the reported highway sightings. However, investigators have consistently emphasized that no theory should be accepted as fact unless it is supported by reliable evidence. Public statements have therefore focused on documented investigative findings rather than unverified claims. As technology has advanced, investigators have continued to review evidence using modern forensic methods. DNA analysis, trace evidence examination, and improvements in laboratory science have transformed many historical investigations across the United States. Although officials have not publicly described every examination conducted in Asha Degree's case, they have acknowledged that evidence has been reassessed when appropriate as scientific capabilities have improved. Investigators have also revisited witness interviews and historical records. Cold case reviews often involve comparing earlier statements with new information, evaluating whether previously overlooked details may have investigative significance, and determining whether additional interviews are warranted. This process reflects standard investigative practice and is intended to ensure that all available evidence is considered using current methods. In recent years, law enforcement has announced additional investigative activity, including searches and the execution of search warrants connected to information developed during the investigation. Officials have generally declined to discuss the evidence supporting these actions while the investigation remains active. They have emphasized that such activity should not be interpreted as confirmation of any specific theory or as an indication that a resolution is imminent. Public cooperation continues to play an important role. Investigators have repeatedly encouraged anyone with first-hand knowledge of events surrounding February 14, SIL 2000 to contact law enforcement, regardless of how much time has passed. Experience from other long-term investigations has demonstrated that information provided years or even decades later can sometimes contribute meaningfully to resolving unresolved cases, particularly when combined with physical evidence or advances in forensic science. Organizations dedicated to missing and exploited children have continued to support public awareness efforts. Age-progressed images have been distributed periodically to assist recognition, and anniversary appeals have helped keep the case visible to the public. These efforts are intended to generate credible information rather than speculation, and to remind potential witnesses that the investigation remains active. Today, several fundamental questions remain unanswered in the public record. Investigators have not publicly established why Asha left her home that morning, what occurred after the reported highway sightings, or how her backpack came to be buried miles away in Burke County. Those questions remain central to the investigation, and authorities have stated that they continue to pursue evidence capable of providing reliable answers. For law enforcement, the case remains an example of the long-term commitment required in unresolved missing person investigations. Preserving evidence, reviewing information as investigative methods evolve, maintaining cooperation among agencies, and encouraging responsible public participation remain essential components of the ongoing effort. Until evidence establishes what happened after Asha Degree left her home on February 14th, 2000 investigators continue to approach the case with the same objective that guided the original search: determining the facts through careful, evidence-based investigation rather than speculation. As of today, the disappearance of Asha Degree remains an active investigation. Law enforcement agencies have consistently stated that the case has not been closed and that investigators continue to evaluate evidence, review information, and pursue credible leads. While many aspects of the investigation have not been made public, officials have emphasized that protecting sensitive details remains important to preserving the integrity of the case. One characteristic of long-running investigations is the preservation of original case materials. Investigators maintain physical evidence, witness statements, photographs, search records, forensic reports, and other documentation so that they can be re-examined as investigative techniques improve. In Asha Degree's case, authorities have indicated that evidence collected during the original investigation has been retained for continued analysis when appropriate. Cold case reviews are an ongoing process rather than a single event. Detectives periodically revisit the timeline, compare historical interviews with newly developed information, and examine whether advances in forensic science may provide additional opportunities for analysis. Improvements in DNA technology, trace evidence examination, digital databases, and laboratory procedures have changed the way many historical investigations are approached. Although no publicly announced forensic breakthrough has resolved Asha's disappearance, investigators continue to monitor developments that could assist the case. Another important component of the investigation is the evaluation of public tips. Since 2000, law enforcement has received information from members of the public, both within North Carolina and from other locations. Every tip must be assessed against existing evidence before investigators determine whether further inquiry is appropriate. While many reports can ultimately be excluded through routine investigative work, authorities have repeatedly noted that credible information received years after an event can still prove significant. Investigators have also maintained cooperation across multiple agencies. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office continues to work with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other organizations when specialized expertise is needed. Such partnerships allow investigators to consult forensic specialists, intelligence analysts, and other experts whose work may contribute to the investigation. Throughout the years, officials have remained cautious in discussing specific investigative findings. Certain information has been intentionally withheld from public release because it may assist investigators in evaluating future witness statements or preserving potential prosecutorial options should the case eventually be resolved. This practice is common in unresolved criminal and missing person investigations and should not be interpreted as evidence that authorities have reached conclusions that have not been announced publicly. Public awareness campaigns continue to play a supporting role. Organizations such as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children have periodically issued updated age-progressed images and renewed appeals for information. These efforts are designed to encourage individuals who may possess relevant knowledge to contact law enforcement, while also reminding the public that the investigation remains active. Law enforcement has consistently encouraged anyone with first-hand or verifiable information to report it directly to investigators. Officials have stressed that even details that seemed unimportant years earlier may become meaningful when considered alongside newly developed evidence or advances in forensic analysis. This principle has contributed to the resolution of numerous long-term investigations in other cases, reinforcing the value of continued public cooperation. The investigation has also highlighted the importance of distinguishing between documented facts and speculation. Over more than 2 decades, numerous unofficial theories have circulated through books, documentaries, podcasts, online forums, and social media. While public interest has helped maintain awareness of the case, investigators have repeatedly advised that unofficial theories should not be regarded as established fact unless supported by reliable evidence. Official statements have consistently focused on information that can be corroborated through investigative findings. For Asha Degree's family, the investigation has represented a continuing search for factual answers. Public statements over the years have reflected appreciation for the efforts of investigators and the support of the community, while expressing hope that someone with relevant information will eventually come forward. Law enforcement has likewise reaffirmed that the passage of time does not reduce the importance of resolving the case or identifying the circumstances surrounding Asha's disappearance. More than 25 years after Asha Degree was last seen, several key questions remain unanswered in the public record. Investigators have not publicly established why she left her home during the early morning hours of February 14th, SIL 2000, what occurred after the reported sightings along North Carolina Highway 18T, or how her backpack came to be buried approximately 26 miles away in Burke County. Those unanswered questions continue to guide investigative efforts. Despite the absence of a public resolution, authorities continue to describe the case as active. Evidence is preserved, investigative records are maintained, and credible information continues to be evaluated. The objective remains unchanged: to establish, through verifiable evidence and careful investigation, what happened to Asha Degree and to provide factual answers supported by the available evidence. More than 2 decades after Asha Degree disappeared, the case remains one of North Carolina's longest-running active missing child investigations. Although many aspects of the investigation have been publicly documented, the central questions remain unanswered. Law enforcement agencies have consistently stated that the investigation is active and that detectives continue to evaluate evidence, review historical records, and assess new information as it becomes available. The publicly established timeline remains relatively concise. Asha Degree was last known to be at her family's home in Shelby, North Carolina, during the early morning hours of February 14th, SIL 2000A. Investigators believe she left the residence before dawn. Independent witness reports placed a child matching her description walking along North Carolina Highway 18 during severe weather conditions. Extensive searches followed, involving local, state, and federal resources, but Asha herself was not located. In August 2001, her backpack was recovered in Burke County, approximately 26 miles from her home, having been wrapped in plastic bags before being discovered. These facts continue to form the foundation of the public investigation. Over the years, investigators have repeatedly revisited the case using improved forensic methods and updated investigative practices. Physical evidence has been preserved for future examination. Witness statements have been reviewed, and additional investigative activity has occurred as new information has emerged. Authorities have not publicly disclosed every aspect of these efforts, explaining that some investigative details remain confidential to preserve the integrity of the case and to assist in evaluating future information. One of the consistent messages from law enforcement has been the importance of separating verified facts from speculation. Because the case has attracted widespread attention, numerous unofficial theories have circulated in books, documentaries, podcasts, internet forums, and social media. Investigators have repeatedly emphasized that conclusions should be based on evidence rather than assumptions. This approach reflects a fundamental principle of criminal investigations. Reliable findings must be supported by corroborated information that can withstand careful examination. The investigation has also illustrated how advances in forensic science can influence long-term cases. Improvements in DNA analysis, evidence preservation, digital records management, and laboratory techniques have transformed the investigation of historical crimes across the United States. Although no publicly announced forensic breakthrough has resolved Asha Degree's disappearance, authorities continue to preserve evidence so that future scientific developments may be applied if appropriate. Interagency cooperation has remained an important component of the investigation. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office has worked alongside the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and other organizations with expertise in forensic science and missing person investigations. Such cooperation allows investigators to share specialized resources while maintaining continuity throughout the investigation. Public participation has likewise remained significant. Investigators continue to encourage anyone with first-hand knowledge or credible information to contact law enforcement. Experience from other long-term investigations has shown that information provided years after an event can sometimes contribute to establishing timelines, identifying witnesses, or supporting forensic findings. Consequently, authorities continue to remind the public that even seemingly minor details may be relevant if they can be independently verified. For Asha Degree's family, the investigation represents an ongoing effort to determine what happened on February 14th. Still, 2,000 public statements over the years have reflected a consistent hope that factual answers will eventually emerge through continued investigative work. Law enforcement has echoed that commitment, emphasizing that the objective is to establish the truth through evidence rather than speculation. As of the present day, no publicly announced conclusion has resolved the case. Investigators have not publicly identified the circumstances that led Asha to leave her home, what occurred after the reported highway sightings, or how her belongings came to be found in Burke County. Those unanswered questions remain at the center of the investigation and continue to guide law enforcement's efforts. The case also serves as a reminder of the broader challenges associated with unresolved missing person investigations. Time can complicate evidence collection and witness recollection, yet advances in science and investigative practice continue to create new opportunities for review. The preservation of evidence, careful documentation, cooperation among agencies, and responsible public engagement all remain essential components of long-term investigative work. While the disappearance of Asha Degree has not been resolved publicly, the investigation has not ended. Authorities continue to examine credible information, preserve evidence, and apply modern investigative techniques whenever appropriate. Until reliable evidence establishes what happened, the case remains an active investigation dedicated to determining the facts through objective, evidence-based inquiry.